heavy through.
This is where I
So it gives
started.
the opportunity to
That's
compress.
too official.
With the microphone?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to use microphone. My name is Trevor. That's Max. Hey. You're at Papers We Love. So welcome to Papers We Love. Yay! This is a group that started many years ago? Many years ago. Hundreds of years ago.
I think it was like 4.
I think it's 4 years ago too. Yeah, I think we're rapidly approaching our 50th meetup. Which is
fast.
we have had our 50th meetup. Yeah.
Like cake or something.
We should have cake. One day we'll bring it.
I didn't cake. I brought stuff.
Oh my God, you did bring cake. Max brought cake on the 50th. It was really good. Thank you all for being here. If this is your first time, double welcome. Super excited to have you. This is a meetup of a bunch of geeky people that like to talk about academic papers for no other reason than they find them interesting. And so that's what we're all here for. The paper that we're going to talk about today is Full Stack Teams, Not Engineers. And I'm going to run like we used to run papers back in the day, where like I'm going to dig through the paper and we're going to really talk through it together and have a discussion. I'm going to put this microphone down eventually, but first I need to do a couple announcements. One is that we have a code of conduct here at Papers We Love. Papers We Love is not just in Seattle, it's all over the world, and we have a code of conduct that we deeply respect. It basically says, don't be a jerk to one another. If you feel like someone is being mean or offensive to you, come see me, come see Max. We'll take care of it. If you feel like something happened afterwards, you can reach out to us on Slack, email, telephone. I think we have our telephone up in the GitHub for Papers We Love. Reach out. It's our job to make sure that this is a welcoming and inclusive place. And we really care about that.
We reserve the right to ask you to leave if you violate that thing.
That's true. So yeah, what other announcements do you have? Do you have any announcements?
Big thanks to Glympse again for
Yay,
hosting us.
Glympse!
Turns out it's kind of hard to find a place willing to host a meetup that doesn't talk about any technology or anything specific than papers, so we're always grateful to companies willing to provide space and even better food.
Yeah.
That's double great. Just recently, if you find Papers We Love cool, just recently with Papers We Love Conf over in St. Louis, the talks are all posted online. This gentleman over here is wearing a shirt from Papers We Love Conf, but
Oh, I love that t-shirt.
but talks are posted online. There's four, I think. And I haven't seen them myself yet, but I've heard that at least one of them is really, really good. So check them out. Also, Strange Loop happened around that. If it's maybe we go to the pre-con. Most of Strange Loop's talks, like 90% of them, are posted at this point. And so if you find that kind of stuff interesting, there's a lot of good talks from Strange Loop that you might also enjoy.
Same with Construct Conf, which is a local conference.
But their talks aren't.
They're not. They will be eventually. Yeah, it takes them a long time. If you like Papers We Love, you'll definitely like Strange Loop, Papers We Love Conf, or Deconstruct Conf. They're like, this in a conference form. So that's cool. One other thing that I neglected to mention, we are always looking for people to lead discussions. It does, as you will see tonight, it does not take much intelligence to lead a discussion. Trust me. So, like, we're looking for people. We're always open to people, and you don't have to have written the paper. You don't even have to know the paper all that well. You just have to come into it with an open mind, willing to like be vulnerable, share what you learn, and feed off each other. Like the goal of Papers We Love is the goal of Papers We Love is to say, hey, none of us fully understands what's in one of these things, but if we all get together and we talk about it, then we still won't fully understand it. But some of us will learn a little bit more by sharing information. This is a much more accessible paper than most, so yeah, you'll find that this one is we'll have more to talk about because there's no math in it.
But if you do fully understand the paper and you're just like really excited to share it, that's also totally cool.
Totally cool. Totally. But not a prerequisite, which is the key. So anyone can do this.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
We don't have a speaker for next month yet. My current thread is that if we don't get a speaker for next month, I'm going to do something on like checkpoint system. So like that's up in the air, I guess. We don't want to talk for next month. If you want to talk, if you are even remotely interested in talking, come reach out on Meetup or Slack is probably the best way to get in touch with us. Slack is linked on our Meetup. And we can get you a talk. If you just want to give like a 10-minute, 15-minute talk, lightning talk, we have room for that too. Just let us know and we'd love to have you up here for a second.
Yeah, hi. And afterwards, we'll go up to the 4th floor and have a drink because there's a great bar on the 4th floor and it's wonderful. So please stay afterwards if you're so inclined to have a beverage with us. But let's talk about this paper, full stack teams engineers.
You have 10% battery life?
My God. Let's fix that.
I can handle that if you want, and you want to start.
Oh yeah, sure.
That would have just been a sad 5 minutes in thing.
No, that's why I do the same thing. If like someone's giving a presentation and it's there, like I can't even think. I'm like, it's going in. And every time it goes down, I'm like, no. Let us alleviate everyone's anxiety, including mine. Voila. Plug in. Alright. So I want to start with talking about a friend of mine. This is a real friend in Philadelphia. His name's Jordan. And Jordan was a Python developer at a really small shop. It's a nonprofit actually. It's a nonprofit that did a medical journal. Okay, they had one developer. It was Jordan. Jordan was the developer, and he was in charge of literally everything related to technology at this tiny nonprofit. He set up the servers he racked servers. He maintained the database. He wrote the apps. He wrote the UI. He made sure everything was deployed. He was the literally only person on call, and he made, I think, $54,000 a year because it was a non-profit. So like this is a full stack engineer. Like he's the real employee. How many of you have been that person in the past? Like, yeah, like a few of us, to be sure. It sucks. And a lot of what this paper is about is why that sucks. You become a single point of failure. You get burned out. Like at the end of the day, like Jordan did that job for I think almost 10 years, and finally he got burned out. He quit. He's doing another gig where he's part of a full team now. He's much happier. But there was this trend, maybe started around 10 years ago, that like full stack developers were like the thing that everyone wanted. Everyone wants this full stack developer, right? And so Jordan was the exemplar of this. But because of that, things go kind of sideways. They talk about that with this fake person on page 1, but I probably exchange that with a real person. But yeah, like being that single point of failure and that bottleneck, like he had to be on call all the time because no one else knew how to do what he did. Because when there's only one person, there's like no one to review code with. This gets even worse when you have a team of full stack developers. I've definitely seen that as well, right? Where now all of a sudden you have a bunch of people with this mentality, and you get this hero mentality, and like, oh, I can get it done. But like when you're in that mode, you push through, and it makes it so it becomes unreproducible. So you end up with unreproducible situations. That is no fun. So this paper is outlining that a little bit more. Yeah, let's chime in. Feel free to chime in whenever you want. Be like, yeah, man, or no way, or who's not? Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a
repeat it
really
for the-
yeah. It sucked less 40 years ago when the stack was much less complex. Yeah.
No, that was
Totally right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, and part of the paper talks about that too. Like the stack has like exploded into like literal insanity. We'll get to that in a second. Like what the full stack is today. Like the person that meets all those requirements is unrealistic. It's just an unrealistic human being, right? It does change. Yeah, the stack is mutable. Mutability is the worst. But yeah, look at this. So this is the number of people in Stack Overflow that call themselves full stack developers, which is the kind of a wonky thing to. I have opinions about some things in the paper that I'll comment on, but like this is kind of a wonky way to identify, but it's a trend. Like people want to be called full stack developers because that's a resume flag. Like a lot of places, especially small companies, startups, they're looking for that one dev to rule them all to like solve all their problems. Imagine you're like a business guy with a suit, and you just want a technology person to solve all your problems. Like it seems like the cheapest way to do it is with full stack developer. Full stack, that sounds great, right? But like, what is the full stack developer? It's like if you look at the next page, they have a common skill set for the full stack developer. If you have the paper in front of you, it is comical all the list of responsibilities. Let me read some of these. They're ridiculous, right? This is like from a real example. Develop the front end, develop the user interface, back end, create the servers and databases, make sure it works on mobile phones, ensure responsiveness. You have to make sure it's format. Oh yeah, you have to do all the APIs, write all the tech docs, obviously. And then when and you have to stay up to date. So like when we move to Kubernetes, you just have to figure all that out because that's easy. Kubernetes is simple, right, Josh? That's a pack of lies. But yeah, another thing is that even the concept of labeling yourself as a full stack developer is kind of wonky because the stacks are so radically different between each company. Each company's gonna have a totally different stack. Like maybe you're writing microservices in Docker containers in Go, and maybe over here you're writing a huge monolith in PHP. Totally different stack, right? It's apples and oranges. Maybe like you're working in MySQL. Maybe you're working in Dynamo. Like that's totally different,
So just maybe a couple of thoughts. I'm sure of the history, but in terms of contextualizing, describing a full stack developer in terms of technologies, right? Like, I mean, is there some alignment between the hype of startups and then rapid frameworks like Ruby on Rails, right? There's a little bit of like, sort of like hope in terms of like your productivity to get those startups going with something like that. So, I mean, some of the contextualization of the technologies that describe a full stack developer here don't line up with, I think, were some fads or trends or promises. So I guess I would take a little bit of.
We've had some of these like frameworks like for a while, because like even before Ruby on Rails, there was like Struts and and like
Django.
Woo! Is that with the same hype necessarily? The same promise or hype?
No, I agree with you. Like there was something that happened in around 2005, 2006 with Ruby on Rails that I agree
And
with you.
startups.
Yeah, and startups. There was this coinciding where Rails became a pivot point, and the full stack developer blossomed as a
Yeah.
very popular thing.
There is a potential advantage of the single point for a lot of stuff. If you put you in a good bargain,
Good.
yeah.
That's a very good point, but it also.
But that's how it's great to do.
No, yeah, no. I mean, solid
Not
point.
for the company overall,
Yeah,
just for the
if,
individual.
if you
Yes.
are the sole bottleneck, so a single point. Another way of saying a single point of failure is a bottleneck. You are a bottleneck. In lean manufacturing, something I kind of nerd out on. One of the things you want to figure out to identify and eliminate are bottlenecks. Any single point of failure in a system, whether it's a software system or a human system, it can be problematic for the system writ large, right? Yeah, it gives you, you as how many of you have read the Phoenix Project? Oh man, homework. Y'all should
We
read
have
the
a
Phoenix
copy of it
Project.
over here.
It's Phoenix Project is a fantastic book. It's a business novel, and it reads like a novel. It is a novel about this guy that works in an IT company, and it's falling apart. And it's a hot mess. And one of the main characters is this guy named Brent, and Brent is he's a rock star programmer. I hate that term. It's a horrible term.
He's the only one anyone trusts to do anything.
He's the only way, yeah, right. and he's the guy that's like, I got it. It's fixed. But never explains it. Just does it. You know this person. You've probably worked with this person. You might be this person, and that's okay. I've definitely been this person. I had been that person before. This is that person is dangerous for the company because you do have good bargaining, but if you get hit by a bus, the company is SOL. And if you're looking at the system level as opposed to the individual level, and you want to support the system, then you want to minimize those single points of failure. You want to minimize the Brents. And there's a couple of ways of doing that we'll get into later in the paper. This is super cool.
Another problem I think is that it's fun to be that person.
It's so fun to be that person. It is so
Those
fun to be that
moments,
person.
Not in the burnout moments, but.
Well, no, that's the thing though. I mean, so like when that's like it's really fun until it really isn't.
It's
Yeah.
instant gratification,
Yeah.
instant gratification, and then sort of a delayed, like you can't take a vacation.
You can't
Because
take-
you take a vacation, you're stressed about what's happening with the stuff that how are people doing in the office.
But
Someone
you
called.
get constant positive feedback too. If you're the person that knows everything, if you're the true full stack developer, you are constantly getting praised. So I used to do this. I used to be the full stack developer, and people would come up to you and they're like, "Oh my God, you're amazing. No one can do this." And like that is a dopamine hit right there.
Maybe
You're
no one
feeling
should do
good.
this.
You know? You're like, yeah, I am good. Oh, I'm so good. It feels good. It just feels good, right? But the flip side is burnout. And in the paper they mentioned Maslow. This woman named I think her name is Barbara Maslow created something called the Maslow Burnout Index. It's awesome. It's a really simple test. I think it costs $14 to take. Totally take it. It's awesome. Until you're burned out. Maybe just
$14
don't take the test and just assume you're burned out. But she did this research about burnout that where actually quantifying it and understanding how it's a real thing that you need to pay attention to. And it's especially astute in people that have all the burden on them. And that gets harder and harder. I mean, I have a family with kids. I'll give you an example. I couldn't be the single point of failure today. My daughter had to go to the ER. She had intense stomach pains. She's 5 years old. She had to go to the ER. They had to drop everything, take her to the emergency room. I had to get my kid to school. I can't be the single point of failure. There's no way. Like if the database went down and no one else knew how to fix that database, well, today that database is going to be down, right? So you don't want that. Like for the system, I think that's really the change of thinking is instead of thinking about the individual, you think about the whole system. This is hard to do when you're an employee, right? Because it's when you're being paid by someone to do something, you think, oh well, I just do my thing, and I'm paid to do the thing, and I'm good at the thing, and it's fine. But what we really need to start doing is taking a step back and saying, I don't just do the thing, but I look at the system around me and I find the holes, and that's like where this paper really comes into play. When you step back and look at the system, then having that single person is troublesome. Right? And they're also really hard to find. I mean, they go into like what the stack is here. They have a couple examples of it. This I love this picture on page 10 of.
Probably can pull it up.
I can, using the power of computers. Look at this. Like this. This is an example of a full stack. Someone that does CBCI, like Spinnaker, right? And Nginx, you can write the CSS no problem. Do the React stuff, write the RESTful things. I'll make sure we have a.
What is
copy.
SDLC?
What's that?
What is SDLC?
The software
Development
development
life
life
cycle.
cycle. So a software development life cycle. Also, you need to know what software development life cycle is. Did we tell you that you're going to be managing yourself because self-organizing teams? That's a thing. So it becomes you need to know all this stuff. And I would argue that most folks that have been software engineers for a considerable amount of time know some things about all these things. You probably, if you've been in the industry more than 5 years, know a little bit about all these things. Maybe you know a little bit of React, like played around with it. Maybe you know a little bit about Kafka because you like set up a stream. Maybe you know a lot about something else. One of the things we talk about later on is what we want instead of full stack engineers is teams of people that are T-shaped. Have you heard of T-shaped developers before? Don't shame people who didn't read the paper.
He did that.
I almost never read the paper. I read it this time because I'm talking.
Doesn't that take all the fun out of it?
Yeah. I'm going to draw a picture. That's cool.
Yeah.
This also happens to be the stuff I really like talking about. I'm an engineering manager, and I like talking about people stuff. So like a full stack person, if this is like knowledge, right? And this is no knowledge, no knowledge, and this is all the knowledge. Right? Chart. The full stack developer is someone that has all the knowledge on everything. So you're way up here, right?
You flip
Oh,
your.
I fucked it up. This is your manager. They have no knowledge on everything. There's my magic joke. All right.
You're doing graph, therefore the access.
I'm the worst. So like, each one of these 6 is like database, AWS, and Git, and JavaScript, and Closure.
Yes, the classic full stack.
You laugh, but oh no.
I could be working for Jane Street Capital. You're
Yo,
right.
this is real life. Okay, fine. Haskell. Like you have some Haskell in here. Like for papers, right?
I found out recently. Does anybody know the CoStar astrology app that's popular right now?
Oh yeah.
It's written in Haskell.
No, it's not.
The back end is written in Haskell.
That is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard.
I was like, I'm moving to New York and I'm going to work for you.
The astrology app is written in Haskell. That's a work of art right there.
The astrology people are responsible for like collecting all of the time zones.
Yeah, it's all the chart stuff. Yeah.
Oh, that is fascinating.
They're
So
on
you
it.
know time zones. You know astrology.
I mean, yeah, that's your subject matter, right? Too. You need context.
You have context. You have, like this is like you. In all seriousness, this could be your business. Yeah.
Okay.
Domain knowledge.
Yeah, business, a domain knowledge, right? So you're a true full stack person, and I'm telling you, sometimes they exist. They're down here. They have all of this, right? But this person that has all the knowledge on all these things is super unrealistic. You can have, and one of the big problems, and they pointed this out in the paper too, I love that they pointed this out, is that when writing job descriptions, many companies write this job description. You need to have 10 years of experience in all of this, right?
Or like a list of tools, right?
Or list of tools, they do a list of tools. And one of the things they really point out in the paper that I love is doing that, pointing that out, excludes women almost universally because of like the propensity of men, mostly white men, to ignore what it says and apply anyway. Right? So the system skews for people that are lazy and don't read it, or like, oh, whatever, who cares, right? And so that totally skews the system. So like, if you're writing job descriptions, please don't do that. There are lots of great tools out there. Like Textio is a great company that is you can put your job description through, and it'll call all those flags. Oh, you called this person a rock star. Please not that. And, there are obvious things, but there are a bunch of things that maybe you never thought of before. If you're a person responsible for writing job descriptions, I encourage you to check out Textio or something equivalent to take that language out of what you're looking for. It really matters. It's public service announcement there.
There's also another aspect of this too, is if you're asking for a person with knowledge of everything, then you probably don't actually have that person, and therefore, how do you evaluate that they actually, you have no ability to evaluate their knowledge.
You definitely are not that person if you're asking for it. Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm asking for 10 years experience with like Clojure and Haskell and time zones and all this, and they come in and say, yeah, man, I used Clojure once. It's like it's on the Ruby stack. It's part of the, it's part of the LAMP stack. And you're like, sure, whatever. It sounds good enough to me.
Do you mean Google Clojure? Or?
You have to figure out what they know and can test you on.
You go into the interview and they ask you to implement a hash map in Java or something. And you're like,
Oh, that's the worst feeling. Oh,
I think you forgot unicorn.
Oh, unicorn. That's assumed. It's assumed that you are an expert in unicorns.
I also wonder if it's just not kind of mixed in with, at least this has been my experience, like how we tend to want to reward and evaluate people. Like, who is the best? Who is really truly the best? But really, I know they're just a little bit better, but who really truly is the best employee? But really, like this digging really deep for marginal differences. Like, if it's not tied to wanting to do that, instead of just saying, there's a lot of pretty good efforts, and they're all really pretty good. And then the sum of that's much better than the one person that will do perhaps marginally better than even all the pretty goods. But the sum of the pretty goods are much better. I don't know if it's mixed in there somewhere.
The sum of the, that is the thesis of this entire paper. The sum of the pretty goods is better. And that brings us to
summary of another previous paper we did too.
Oh, yes it is.
Toxic workers.
Toxic workers. You mentioned yes, that was a great analogy, right? It's like the rock star is not a good thing, rock star is a bad thing. Definitely shout out to Ash Ketchum, who for the first time in 25 years actually won the Pokemon tournament. That's pretty exciting.
I think he's just discovered the secret of immortality, and it's no big deal.
Yeah, but it took him 25 years to. This is like, I watched so much Pokemon for this. Never mind. So what's a T-shaped person? A T-shaped person is someone who has a little bit of knowledge. So it doesn't actually look like a T necessarily like this. You have a little bit of knowledge in some of these things, but you happen to be a closure expert. This person is very realistic. This person exists. There's someone out there that like knows closure really, really well, but they also know a little bit of JavaScript. They also know a little bit of Git. They can check the code in. They've deployed AWS a little bit. They've worked with some databases. Like they know what a time zone is. Good job. You know, they read their astrology, so maybe this is a little bit deeper here. You know, but you know, this is actually a good point though. Like the true T-shaped person, the paper that came out about this, about T-shaped people, had them as deep in one. A paper that came out a couple years after this really pointed out we're not looking for T-shaped people, we're really looking for M-shaped people. So I think just muddies the water a little bit. So never mind that. But they're talking about like this looks a little bit more like you're deeper in some and not deeper in others. That's just pedantic and confuses the scenario. So if I have a team of many T-shaped people, right? Like this. I have to get the astrology
That
person.
astrology master.
Yeah. Right? If I have a team of T-shaped people and I'm creating
lot to manage.
a astrology like thing in Haskell that has to tie into some closure backend on AWS and it's backed by Dyno, like this team's got you, right? You know, each one of them can knows something really well, but knows everything else a little bit, and they can back each other up. These are T-shaped people. When you're looking, this is one strategy of building a full stack team, is finding T-shaped people, which are way easier to find. Way easier to find the astrology master than someone who knows everything. You know, easier to hire. They're usually more junior, and they can work together. So that's one strategy. There's a couple other we'll get into in a little bit. That's T-shaped people. That is one of the things the paper doesn't address, and it pisses me off because team dynamics is complicated. When you're the one developer to rule them all, because there's no other developers, you don't have to work with anyone else. But like team dynamics is a real thing and a complicated issue that they don't necessarily get into in this paper. I think the paper is assuming. One team that is more balanced as the ideal, this full stack team where you have either T-shaped people or growth mindset people or teaching people, and I'll get into what those mean in a bit, as opposed to a team where you have one rock star. I'm going to stop using that term. One single point of failure. I'm just going to call it single point of failure. One single point of failure, swath, and a bunch of people around them. When you're at a large company, this is a really common thing, and these people tend to come out of the woodwork, especially during times of stress. So, like, you're in a stressful situation. Your person that becomes that Brent eventually, the proto Brent, as it were, starts to shine a little bit more, and management encourages it because of that positive feedback loop, right? Like you start doing a little bit more than everyone else. You're the person in the class project that's doing all the work. In the class project, you don't get credit for it, but in a healthy work environment, you start to get credit for it. You start being noticed for that, and people start to depend on you more because you're the person that people know gets stuff done. And that's how, more often than not, that's how this happens. It doesn't happen because you're hiring a full stack developer. It happens because these single points of failure develop through natural acuity and desire to get stuff done, and it's through no fault of the developer by themselves. That's why it's so important to think about the team dynamics of the team, which if you're just focused on getting stuff done, if you're just focused on delivering that piece of product right now, that single point of failure model works really well, where you have one person that's doing most of the work and everyone else kind of supporting them a little bit. It delivers. but if you don't have someone on the team, or ideally managing the team, or leading the team, I should say, thinking about how that team dynamic works, then if left alone, you get in trouble. I've been on so many teams like this. It is an astoundingly common model.
It's also really easy to get into this state if you have someone who's been on the team a long time, and then you shake things up and they just stay on the team and everyone else goes off to different projects, which can totally happen. And then all these new people come in and the person's like, well, it's more trouble to explain it to you than just do it myself, so they just keep doing everything.
And if then the manager doesn't emphasize knowledge.
You have knowledge transfer, if you don't have good docs, if you don't focus, if you don't like spend the time. You have a bunch of people sitting around waiting for this one person to do all the work.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think that's absolutely correct, right? Another thing they don't mention in the paper is value systems. But you're right, you know, a management group that rewards people that go, it's not rewards the group. If they reward the heroes, like what you want to do is have a minimal hero system, right? Heroes are problematic. They're really good in a pinch. Some of us, I've definitely like heroed up more than once, right? But like when you hero up, like you become more dependent. What you want to do is not celebrate those heroics, because those heroics were the result of a bad situation in the first place, right? You wouldn't have needed a hero if you had been in a better situation to start, more maintainable situation to start, right? So the trick from a management point of view is how do you recognize someone for going above and beyond, but disincentivize gains that state in the first place. Yes. they do mention that in the suffix after the epilogue. There's a point where they're talking about ways to get there, and one of the ways to get there is to shift. What's that? I think it's, I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. That's a really good point. Whether or not it's in the paper, that's a really good point, because like if you reward teaching, and they do mention in the paper about teaching being a path out, you reward the teacher, not the doer, right? And one of the things we look for when we look for like really senior engineers and leaders of teams is people that skew for teaching rather than doing, right? Because if I can teach a man to fish, that was a biblical reference. Then if I biblical reference you, then
then you know the Bible.
You know the Bible. Yes. Yeah, teach a man to fish. Like he's going to, as opposed to just giving him a fish. That's a good thing, and something you expect from him. How do I practice that in my teams? Josh with the hard questions. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I'll give you one really good example. I ran a team a couple years ago. I did some e-commerce stuff. Doesn't really matter. But I found that there was one person on my team. Because of the way our teams were set up in the past, he was the tester. He knew how to write tests. The team only had one tester. No one else on the team knew how to write tests. There was not, but they did. We had developers and testers, and there was only one of them. And if he left, no one knew how to write tests.
Did they not know how to write tests,
Yeah.
or did they just not want to
No.
write tests?
So both of those things.
Because writing tests is really just writing code. Like
It is, but like you have to know, you have to have a test framework, you have to have a test mentality. Well, one of the really good things about testers is the test mentality. That's something that you develop over time as SDET or a software developer test. Is a different way of thinking about code than if you're just a pure developer, right?
Like how can this break?
Yeah, cognitive break. Like, where are my edge cases? How this break? I mean, we all think about that stuff. Testers just think about it a little bit more, so they're more accustomed to it, right? I recognize that person as a single point of failure, and so I had recently read the Phoenix Project. Which, again, go read the Phoenix Project. Seriously, great book. And I said, "You're Brent. I'm going to make it so you're not allowed to write coding. You're not allowed to write a test." I forebode it. And I said, your job is to teach everyone else how to write a test. You're going to parrot them, and you're not going to touch the keyboard, and you're going to teach them all. And he was like, what? And
Taking away his
I'm
thing.
like, trust me. And then all the developers were like, what? I'm like, no, we all need to learn how to write tests. This is not cool. Like, if he leaves, we're all screwed. Like, you cannot deploy your code if he leaves. Got it? And they're like, okay. So he bought in. And the
They're
team
like,
bought
okay,
in.
that sounds fine.
Yeah. Like, we don't need to deploy. Deploy for suckers. They did not say that, fortunately. He's a good team. But for 6 months, this guy's named Brendan, great guy, still works for me. And he, for 6 months, taught people. He went around each of the developers and taught them how to write integration tests. I'm not talking unit tests. Developers should write unit tests. Write unit tests. But like integrations, like in messy integration tests. Like he taught everyone how to do it. By the end of that 6 months, all 7 people on the team were really comfortable. Not only comfortable writing integration tests, but they did it. That became part of the workflow. Is everyone shared that knowledge together, and they not only shared it, they picked up the work. So he could leave. The team knew how to think in a test mentality and how to write those integration tests. So,
Another thing you can do as an individual contributor is like if you're looking at your Jira board or whatever you use to keep track of work, and you're like, shit, I have a lot of work on my plate, and like, man, this seems like I could like split it up, but like, man, I'm the only one who knows how to do this, or like these are all designs in my head or something. Like, if you come to a point where you think that, you're like, that's a problem right there, and like, you take a step back and you're like, I want to go on vacation sometime. I don't want to leave this office. Like, this work needs to get done, but I don't want to have to do it all because I hate doing work. So,
no one likes it.
I hate doing work. So you look at your work and you're like, guess what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to, one, like, write documentation on how things work. I want to go and evaluate and be like, hey, if I left, could you, like, read this documentation and maintain it? Go maintain it for 3 days. Or, like, write a design doc and be like, hey, here's a design doc. Like, can you implement this? If you can't implement this, I need to fix up this design doc. But my job right now is not to implement them, it's to write these docs and make sure that I can go on vacation, that I can be lazy, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a great point. That's a great thing you can do as an IC. Yeah, you had it. Oh, yeah.
So I had a project where I had 4 interns, 2 of them were designers.
Oh.
And I forced them to learn how to code.
Oh.
Because I couldn't have this much code at this point in their design. Really develop an understanding of how integration technology works and moving their design forward. And then clear their own prototypes.
So,
Similarly, in coders, I don't want to do the design processes. So it's all about how we work together.
and that goes back to creating. This is one of the beefs that I went back to. That people want M-shaped people instead of T-shaped people. When you start with T-shaped people, you had an example of a team with 2 T-shaped people that you designed, 2 T-shaped people that you coded in this example. By having them teach each other, each one of them gets a little bit more experience, and you get more M-shaped. That's what happens, and this is what we mean by M-shaped people. When you have teams of T-shaped people, and they share knowledge and they teach each other, the other people on the team, those designers are never going to be expert coders, and those coders are never going to be expert designers. It takes many, many years, tens of years, to become a really good designer. Same with being a really good developer. It takes a long time. But you're going to get them a little bit closer. And that's really the power of teaching, you know. Josh.
Like, I think for me, I was just thinking of the conspiracy technology, all the different things around it. So
No, exactly. Like, like when you're teaching, you're not teaching to have the other person become the expert, unless that happens to be something that sparks their interest, sparks their joy. Yeah, I'm going to KondoMari this thing. What sparks joy in your work life? I love that book, by the way. It's so good. So if it's something that really excites them, yeah, they'll dive into it. But it's not necessarily required.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about being a contractor with master people is the contracts are necessity because of the permatex stuff always end up being limited time. And so I am frequently given charge of like really important projects, but then I have to make sure that everybody else can do them on time. And in fact, that's my favorite.
That's awesome. I remember being a contractor too, man. Yeah, I remember in the very contract, I had to make sure that like my documentation was tight and other people knew my stuff, or I'm not gonna be hired again. It feels good, right? Everyone should experience at least once like being a contractor because it's a kind of a good feeling. And for some people it's a total lifestyle being a consultant, but it's a fun thing to do.
It's pretty rare. It's pretty rare for people working in the corporate software world to get projects with like a hard time constraint like that. So that can be nice to have.
It's liberating.
Yeah.
It's a fun thing to do.
It's done when it's done.
If you want a similar experience, go on vacation, just turn off your phone. You can do that.
If you can do that, you're working at a pretty good place. If you can go on vacation and turn off your phone without being called 1 liter into a big beer at Disney World, Josh, then you're doing okay. Long story. I'm going to go back to the talk a little bit because I want to hammer in some of the bad things, some more bad things about being a starting point failure if I haven't hammered them in enough. This example, by the way, this is a bit of a bombastic example, but it's pretty good. This is a chart of one JD, one job description, and the number of developers estimated to qualify for it, and in the world. And by the time they got halfway through, the number went from 98,000 to 44. So, like, full stack people are super unrealistic to be expert in it. Again, that's why when you read a JC, so pro tip, if you read a JC that wants you to be an expert at everything, please ignore it and apply anyway, because they don't know what they're talking about. Maybe you can come and teach them that that's what they want.
I was just looking at a contract in South Africa. They wanted 7 years experience in VR development. Commercial VR applications do not exist for 5 years.
Oh yeah, that's definitely one of my favorites. Like 15 years experience in Kubernetes.
Yeah.
It's solid stuff.
Go is about to hit its 10th anniversary, so first coming on.
Like, all of a sudden, hundreds of thousands of job descriptions will become accurate.
Retroactively.
Retroactively.
Now they'll just change it to 15.
Yeah, that's right. But no, so one of the things, I want to go down to what it says here. Like burnout is real. Burnout is definitely real. Again, the Maslow burnout index is something you should definitely check out. It does cost a little bit of money, but most of us make money, so check it out. It's super interesting. And some of the things that come out of it that we don't think of, we don't quantify, is software people. It's hard to quantify emotions, but we need to think about them because like we're whole beings. We're not just software engineers, right? And burnout becomes loss of energy, loss of enthusiasm, loss of confidence. This last one is big for me. Like when I'm burned out, I like feel crappy about myself, pretty hard, and I feel like I have like zero confidence to do anything I have this inner person in my head constantly telling me I'm worthless. That guy's cool. But he exists, and I have to deal with him when I'm like short on sleep, when I'm freaking out, and I just came off of 2 weekends of not fun at work, just like incidents at work, like things blew up. We had someone was watching soccer in Sweden and broke one of my servers, and I was on call at 3 in the morning. A few weekends of that's gonna stress you out. And that guy comes calling and saying, "You're an idiot. Why didn't you think of that before?" Right? But that's real, and you have to think about that. Worth looking into. Worth thinking about when you're thinking about being that full stack developer. This is something that you will run into eventually. If you haven't met and you're a full stack developer, you lucked out. It's the flip side of that dopamine hit of you're awesome. Because after you fix that problem at 3 in the morning, everyone tells you you're awesome. Then you get that dopamine hit and fall asleep. It's the high low, yeah. But it's dysregulating, literally dysregulating. They also mentioned something here about information overload, which I thought was interesting, but I don't know if I 100% buy that is a strong argument for this. You know too much. I don't know about.
On the other side, there is something called cognitive load.
Yes.
Which is sounds like more what they're getting into, which is the more you have to it's less like the more you know and the more you have to keep in active memory at a time to understand a system, the harder it gets. There's actually, if you want a place that actually really understands cognitive load, game development. That's some interesting stuff on cognitive load. It matters a lot. When you a strategy game or something, and the more you have to think about, the more cognitive load it is.
For design purposes.
But it's just it's draining. The more cognitive load you have, the more draining it is to deal with.
So to be clear, you're saying that game development understands how to work with players.
Yeah.
That is very true.
Yes. Design, yeah, has to.
System in itself.
Which our game development is classically known for well-balanced teams that have healthy work-life balance. I mean, we all know this, right? You guys.
The kind of loads, more in the short term. For other fields, in fact, that's aviation. That's why we have
Interesting.
what's called a per resource method. Because in 60s and 70s, the captain was, he is the pilot, he's in charge, he does everything, and we had to have a lot of crashing airliners. Because no one said, hey, you're doing the wrong thing here. So now after that, now we actually have what's called just having the whole crew will work together to reduce cognitive loads. It's not on one person. For a whole this one crew.
There's a lot of little procedures to make that. You have to say everything. There's a checklist for everything.
Sorry. Before they had the services. You're going to say something?
Well, I was wondering, so I think this is a real problem, and I was wondering if anybody who does any stuff in their place of work or knows of unique things that help us interact with cognitive overload, information overload, other than maybe your wiki or commit comments.
Work with someone else. Have someone peer programming, or just have someone else who knows just different parts of the system better than you do. Cognitive load usually comes into play when you're dealing with very large, complex systems. And instead of being oh shit, now I have to understand the entire Kafka stack, the entire Kafka system to understand that could have contributed to this. But I'd be hey, you're an expert in Kafka, we're having this bug. Could you give me a hand?
Identifying the right narrow problem is really hard. Yeah, it is.
But being able to throw weight, being able to throw that load around. You just say, I don't need it. Someone else can know this part. That's okay.
It's common for new developers too, right? To
It's super
take
common for
away
new
you want to take away as much as you can, give them something that they can
I see what you're saying.
manage, right? To work within, a space that they can work within, because there's just so many directions to run off into with an undefined space.
Oh yeah, sure. Abstract to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Assuming,
Definitely.
I know how to see keyboard off the top of my head.
But you know that it works.
Also, for reducing time and having a period of least responsibilities operating but someone actually understands the role of this new checklist and things that we've done in place. I found that reduces single error, like reducing
Yeah, it's surprisingly, disturbingly common how often instruments get left in bodies, right?
Yeah. Checklists.
Yeah, huge. As far as how that ties into software development, I think that like Max kind of like hit on something that's really interesting. As an individual contributor, like we can realize all of us, every person in this room is a single point of failure for one tiny bit. You can envision right now in your job one part of the system that you know and you know no one else knows. You probably have that. I can pretty much guarantee every single one of you has that some part of the system that you know and you know no one else knows. One of the things you can do is figure out what that is and actively teach it to one of your teammates. You can do a lunch and learn. You spread that knowledge, and you're not spreading that knowledge for everyone else. You're spreading that knowledge for you. This is where like this is where becoming less of a full stack developer and more part of a full stack team helps not only the system at large, but it helps you as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
So what's really compelling about this concept of a full stack team is it not only helps the company that is you're working for, it helps you and your mental health, eventually too. So it's nice. It's a double win.
On the Dr. Conway road, I want to circle back to something which is, I think there's a kind of overloaded that one of the same kind of goals is like we have to take the graphics, but we can have one person that like can do that. Yeah. But as I think about it, that the team in the past records, there's been like an increased level of staffing that technology that kind of makes full stack kind of the person that just work itself more doable. And one of the things talks about how that the existence of those staffing and those work maybe either eliminates or conversely increases the likelihood of somebody coming to the staff.
That's a great point. And they mention in this book, or in this paper later on, they talk about with the introduction of the cloud and as not just a buzzword, but actually a thing that we use. We have these abstractions of infrastructure as a service, abstractions of platforms as a service, where you don't need to worry about your database anymore because Dynamo does the upgrades for you. You don't have to worry about, you get to point of function services like Lambdas in AWS, now you don't have to worry about the servers at all. You just have to worry about the code. I disagree with this because what I think that does is it takes one type of cognitive load and changes it to another type of cognitive load. Now you need to know how AWS Lambdas work, and they are not the panacea. None of these technologies are the panacea that you believe they are, right?
We trust it and put kind of money at it and have support, right?
Exactly. Anyone that's ever worked with Kubernetes knows that stuff is complicated, right? And yeah, it makes certain parts of your system easier and more repeatable. There's benefits to it. There's definitely benefits to the world we live in now that's made it more robust, more reliable. But I would argue, and the paper disagrees with me, that that doesn't necessarily help with cognitive load. It just offloads it. And what at the end of the paper, spoilers, they talk about this evolution where we have this offloading of infrastructure. You have a platform team that works on the platform or the infrastructure as code, and you have the application team that worries about the application. And I got to honestly, that's the conclusion of this, and it's great. I'm like, wait, no, what? No, you just siloed again. Like right before that, there's a thing that says don't create new silos, and the end of the paper talks about creating 2 new silos.
So I
I disagree with you a little bit on that one.
Sure, yeah.
Personally, like we talked about M-shaped and T-shaped,
Yeah.
but like it's really hard to get M-shaped if I have to like also understand like there is a certain set of scales. So like our load at data, I'm in a data team, and we have like Flink and Kafka and Hive and Spark and S3 and all these systems, MongoDB and CDC and the schema management and like running the code and deployment and all this, and I don't know how any of that stuff works, and like I know how some of it works,
Yeah.
and I know about some of that stuff more than I know about others, but like I can't be an M-shaped person who knows about everything. I'm just a flat line somewhere kind of
Yeah.
Well,
mid.
and a lot of the time it happens by necessity on smaller teams, right? When all of the person who set up your databases is no longer working there, and all of a sudden you have an outage and you need to figure something out, right? So you you go find some access keys and go just start digging. But yeah, I mean, I don't think as far as like limiting yourself to knowing a little bit about everything, being kind of a generalist is pretty helpful. But in terms of like growth in these different areas, I think it makes sense to sort of become M-shaped over time. And I think that some people do it naturally and some people don't, right? Like some people will be like, that thing over there seems interesting to me, I'd like to learn about it. And some people are like, I already know my thing and I'm really great at this thing and I don't want to know about your thing, right? Is that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they mentioned that somewhere in here when going back to hiring, is that when you're hiring and you're thinking about that, you're starting to hire for people with what this book
I think they're working on it.
this paper calls it growth mindset. When you start hiring for people with a growth mindset, they're people that are not experts at something. They might not know things, but they're people with a propensity to learn. And that propensity to learn is a skill in and of itself. If I find someone that doesn't know something, but knows how to learn how to know something, like I'll hire that person. That's the person you want. Like you want those people, they're gold, right? Because they can figure it out. They're the people that like become the M by themselves, you know?
On a side, that term I think is big in education, and I think it's becoming more just of a general term. So it's not just in the paper.
Oh, cool, man. That's awesome. Yeah, it's good to know. It's a broader term. I think it's rad.
If I work in workforce retraining, and a certain amount of my clientele were people that got deep in the vertical until that vertical went away or the company downsized and
Yes.
that department was eliminated.
Yeah.
And now they're coming to me to become more,
Broad.
well, learn some new verticals, right? But they have to go kind of horizontal with the end.
That's the key. And the trick there is to teach them to be. You know this more than I do. But if you can teach people to love to learn, and don't get caught up with knowing, when you invest in yourself as the person that knows the vertical. If you have Java engineer as your title, for example, right? This is the thing that happens, right? Then you're investing in that vertical, and that vertical goes away. You have like a personal example of the innovator's dilemma. Have y'all heard of the innovator's dilemma? Other interesting book worth reading, a little bit older, is about how companies that over specialize can put themselves in a corner. So the example in that book is you're a steel company and you make a whole bunch of steel things. You make screws and bolts and welding stuff, but you're famous for your I-beams. Your I-beams are really the best in the class. Everyone comes to you because your I-beams are amazing. And so you're like, oh, we need to focus on our I-beams. That's the only thing making us money. Everything else is just like nuts and bolts. So you start subcontracting out the nuts and bolts and all these other things until all you have is your I-beam. The analogy here is you become that person that you get really good in your vertical, and you start outsourcing or passing off to other people the rest of the knowledge. It's kind of the opposite of what we were talking about. It's the T-shaped person to the extreme. It's the T-shaped person that has zero knowledge on everything, but really good at time zones.
Is this
Really?
Is this like do startups talk about this sometimes when they talk about like having to pivot, like create a new solution?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pivoting is a big part of
So,
this, right?
the founder of my new company just came out of the summer class for Y Combinator, and she said when she was there was a team who realized in the middle of the accelerator that their prospect was not going to work.
Oh yeah, that happens.
And they continued and just changed their product to have a new focus.
It's smart.
Yeah.
That's very smart.
They started making something new.
Pivoting works in companies, it works with human beings too. And when you get to that point where you're like that pillar of knowledge, and someone else becomes creates a better I-beam, right? Then you're up the creek. Now you're out of a job because that new I-beam is a computer that has replaced what you usually do, right? Now you have to think something new.
Love it.
This is my guess. Is that, do you experience that as well with job retraining?
Well, I experience all kinds of stuff.
Totally.
Mine would definitely vary.
Yeah.
Personality is all over the place. But, yeah, I mean, I just got a particular type in mind who's late 40s, early 50s. They had 15 years at mega corporation X, and that's the one that merger and acquisition tends to wipe out entire departments in one whack. And it turns out that hot technology of 1998 isn't so hot anymore.
Oh yeah.
You know, everything they got from the job.
Well, if I've worked with, it's hard to find that job. No, I totally get that. Yeah.
It probably, you know, so I don't know, but you know, and so I've got to help through a lot of things. Like first of all, you need to find a different ladder that supplies. You have to start lower on the ladder than you speak.
Yes,
You
totally.
know, you have to. Some people are able to deal, and some people aren't.
Yeah, totally.
She's been doing whatever her thing is for many years. And we're like trying to do software merging and we have to have a notice but you know, she didn't understand that. Are you watching CNN?
What's happening?
What is it? One with stock market?
Yeah.
CNBC.
CNBC.
The rise of, you know, how capitalism is going.
Yeah.
You have to change.
You have to pivot. You have to be able to pivot yourself.
Sounds like there's a kind of interesting dichotomy in that. This paper basically says like having one person who knows a lot of stuff is bad.
Yes.
But I think the other condition is having people that are willing to put themselves in a wide variety of things is good.
Yes.
And that's kind of where I am on working.
Totally. Well, I think the key, you know, like there's nuance there. Because like what we can see is that on one side you have the full stack developer that is like maybe cognitive overload and is the expert at everything. They're the rainbow unicorn. In the slide deck that I got 3 slides into before I gave up on, I had a picture of the rainbow unicorn. It was very nice. Trust me, it's a very good picture. You would have loved it. But the other side is the radical extreme of the person that's super vertical and they're one now obsolete technology, right? The argument to be made is that both of those extremes are anti-capitalists. And what you need is a team that can take those strictly T-shaped people and stretch them into M-shaped people and make a team that is going to be more diverse, that's better for the oh yeah, go ahead.
So one thing
Oh,
you
I'm
just
sorry. Yeah.
So earlier this year,
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You need someone that you know what they're going to do.
Cool.
And these are the ones that's great. And we're more than happy whether they want to do something else or whether they take it on. They're going to hire with level skills to the area. And so as we move further along in their career, we expect that to be more broad and more clear knowledge. But it gives you a little point, you need functional knowledge to your staff.
That's true. Yeah.
I was just gonna say that you gave a comment about extremes throughout this whole paper, and in most things in life probably. I think there's always a thing of don't be at the extreme, whatever the extreme is.
Yeah.
Don't be at the extreme. So maybe that you can take the extreme. Maybe.
Unless you're like into like, extreme skating or something. No, that's super dangerous. No, don't do that. I'll get you in a second, Mike.
You know, I'm listening to this and I'm wondering about, you said you disagree with the annual vision, says we have two staffs, two silos. Platform engineers and development.
I do disagree with that.
But what I'm thinking about it is like, we live in a world where I work with an operating system that I don't know what's under the I don't break OS or internet protocol of any kind. I don't have to be a full stack engineer and all that and stuff like that. Just have a state or understand that. We might be now come to the mix, which is platform as software.
Yeah.
That's like, it becomes something you can depend upon, once your virtual machine is working, you need numbers there, they are over there, and just restart it. And then what you truly concentrate on the various things that you can do your stuff. So, I wonder if that's maybe it's the way or it's like stuff.
I definitely think that is the argument that the paper is making is that and you can see right here, right? It looks like this becomes the people that run the virtualized infrastructure. This is your platform team. That's what they do, right? And then your application team is the one that does the application stuff, right? He had a question.
Well, I do think growth-minded folks, though, have some I've worked before on a platform team, and it can be difficult to not get to work on the new development, right? And so this is where things like people creating DevOps teams when DevOps is supposed to be a framework for different teams to interact. I think maybe that's sort of the silo that they're talking about.
Whatever order you want.
Oh, okay. So I have something different.
It's sort of touches on a couple things. I think he's just trying to, as far as the conclusion, he's just mediating against what he thinks is a bigger problem of the full stack emphasis versus, people just doing HTML, just doing CSS, just doing JavaScript, just doing there's not a proliferation of that problem so much as mediating against that. And then as far as his sort of model, I think, I don't think necessarily the useful abstraction that we come across, whether it's in a Kafka and using log, or whether you commodify infrastructure like an AWS and these cloud platforms, you usually just want to do more and do it at larger scale and do more things and do a lot more of the thing you're doing, not so much making each individual more productive. Companies just want to do a lot more. The system wants to do more. And so I don't think individually we're still not it doesn't imply that us individually are doing more full stack. The company is just doing a lot more stuff, and it's a lot more complicated. Amazon's an example of that. Just do a lot of stuff.
Actually,
What's that?
it's almost like they're thinking about single teams of feeling.
That's totally that's what bugs me about it. Oh my god, you
Nailed it.
Nailed it. I couldn't articulate it before. Yeah.
That's single teams of feeling.
Single teams of
But
feeling.
I have a different view of it.
Yeah,
Which is another kind of what you mentioned, which is kind of external, actually the platform management and the role that management has in shaping the structure of the team. And I think kind of the vision there is okay, just go with your vendor and drop on it. Same the system create 3 a.m. Go come back on Monday, do that. But I'm wondering if there's that kind of can you generalize to things in general, and how can you potentially build against this by encouraging that across that community, rather than again following the what's the name of the crowdsourcing platform that Kickstarter
Sorry.
saga that's been going on right now?
Yeah,
Oh,
the
where, like,
labor,
everything-
the anti-labor, yeah.
And I wonder if maybe like labor action could be in the same vein, kind of a way to guard against those modes of failure for benefits of the workers.
Oh, that's really interesting. As an aside, I'm a big fan of organized labor for software developers. That's a good idea. Why don't we get on that? Right? That's a thing. But yeah.
I was just wanting to, like somebody else, I was just wanting to use about the interview experience I had at both Facebook and Indeed. They were looking for DevOps people, and what they look for in DevOps people is they look for people who actually know the entire technology stack from top to bottom. But they don't expect those people to do the entire technology stack from top to bottom. They expect them to mostly stay at the bottom, but teach all the people who are trying to do the other parts what they're doing that doesn't work very well.
That's interesting. Like from their perspective.
Right.
Right. It's a translation problem.
I'll get him first, and then I'll get to yeah. Good.
On the issue of having your platform being set up with product.
Yes.
There are historical examples of developed software where that's actually swordsmiths and non-sword masters.
Aha.
You
Good analogy.
typically develop a tool, not the person. There is collaboration between the two, but one requires something to skill, the both require skill training. Suddenly, if someone's designing a game, should not have to focus on whether or not, how to implement it allows communication.
Totally.
The tools people will focus on tools and it will be easier to look at those tools. And those people will talk to the tools and say what they do. But having someone has to come back and forth is extremely rare.
I think
Can you repeat that initial point here?
Yeah, no. The point I think you're making is, if I can paraphrase, is that the analogy is really good. If you didn't get an analogy, the sword makers and sword masters are not the same. And it's like totally separate skill set, but they are dependent with each other. The same is true in game development, where like your game designers have to be able to work with the people that write the engine, but it's absurd to think you're gonna have a full stack person that does all of that at a high enough level to make an A quality game, right? It's unrealistic. You have to work together. So that is an interesting and salient argument for platform versus application teams. You had,
Yeah, well, first of all, super obvious observation. You can get a college degree in networking. You can get a college degree in dev. Not too many places give you a college degree in both simultaneously.
that's a good point.
Okay. Then another thing is I went to Anita specifically in DevOps for years. We talked to a lot of HR people about how do you get into DevOps? What do you want? What do you want? The gist of it is they told me, yeah, you're gonna come in on one side or the other. You're gonna come in as mostly a dev, who then cross-trains a little bit in ops. Or you're gonna come in mostly in ops and cross-train in dev. And really good DevOps type managers aren't particularly either. They're liberal arts managers or something.
Well, it's good managers.
Honestly, I would argue that
can be
most
found.
good management is a skill in and of itself that is not related to.
Can be trained.
But
That can be trained specifically in
Yes.
I believe it can be trained and it should be trained. Sadly, many managers are software engineers that are unfortunately very good at their jobs, and they pursue management. That happens a lot.
Isn't there's a very, very old saying that doesn't come from software, something about rising to the level of your incompetence?
The Peter principle.
Yes.
The Peter principle is that you will rise to your level of incompetence.
They raise you up until you're not good at it anymore.
To play devil's advocate it is nice to have the advantage of having someone who was a former software in management is they understand sometimes
Yes.
better than non-software people
Assuming they're a full manager, so sometimes
Yeah.
they don't come on and do actual management work, and that can be frustrating for.
So I'm super duper biased because I am a full-on manager, a software developer for 15 years. So I totally agree with you. But yeah, take that with a grain of salt.
I actually feel like there was a school of management that circulated for a while that was like, you can just be a generic manager. And
Yeah, I
don't
think that's.
agree.
I don't agree with that either. I don't think you'd be generic manager, but I do think you once you become a manager, you like your job is to manage. It's not to write code. You
Well,
know?
similarly, you have a thing like this, right, where you have to be good at this whole, the skill set, the underlying skill set is very different for managers.
I
right?
agree.
Yeah. Some overlap, but.
It's potentially possible that part of the reason why there's this full stack early is because of the startup culture and the competition that they had to have someone.
Yeah, everything. Wear all the hats. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, we talked
That's
about
my,
it
my
at the
new
very
job.
beginning. We talked
Yeah.
about how in the mid 2000s Rails really Rails combined with the startup culture over time really like exonerated the full stack developer.
So I was managing the separate skill in the summer of the crash course of 80 for international students. And we actually provide them with artists, coders, and
Nice, yeah.
the managers usually will have some minor role or the other, but they're primary focus to the management. So they know that you have to do this out the code.
Yep.
You build a wonderful team.
That's the hardest skill as a manager is that you have to be the bad guy sometimes, and you have to be the person who decides things. You know, being able to decide things is a skill in itself that not everyone has.
What I love out of a manager is someone who can handle a lot of that cognitive overload for me. Doesn't have to be a huge amount, but just enough to filter me slightly.
Remember that former Uber CEO something said about that? Like, I just make the decisions. That's why. Like,
So let's not be like that guy.
In any way.
For a multitude of reasons.
just make the decision. That's why I'm here.
I would argue
that wasn't him. I know who this was. This was a former. This is the now head director of Iceland. The guy who now is director of Iceland, my former company. I know someone used to work with him at Pivotal Labs, where he comes from.
Pivotal seems like they have a cool culture.
And he was like, yeah, the reason I'm a manager, the reason I'm a manager and stuff is because I'm willing to make the decisions and live with them. So he was kind of an asshole.
He doesn't care if you hate him.
I would argue that the role of management is slightly different than that. I would say that the role of management, as a manager myself, is to support the decisions that the team comes up with. You have the team to be able to make those decisions, and defend the decisions that the team makes, while being the person that when the team can't come to a decision, help facilitate the team to get that decision. You're also the person that if stuff goes wrong, you take the blame, and if stuff goes great, you filter the blame down to your team, or filter the success on your team. Like you're the person that you take the blame if the
I had a manager who used to say people were shit funnels or shit umbrellas.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
I know that we talk a lot about like software developers being like super stressed on how these things but I feel like honestly managers are more in that kind of
Broad.
Many of our managers are super stressed and have blind spots because they're just constantly tugging all these different directions. They have to be technical, they have to be good with people, they have to be this and that.
They have knowledge we don't have also usually as well because they're dealing with the C-levels. And
I don't know, it's not also super
Management? It can be. I think one of the solutions that people came up with in the past for that was self-organizing teams, which taken to extreme also I think fails. But there's a push and pull there. Like if you have a team that has a strong team lead, strong tech lead that can take part of the cognitive load for that the manager would do in running the day-to-day organization of the team. In my ideal team, I have that team lead role is shared among the people on the team. When I've had strong role, a team that's gone through the 4 stages and is a performing team. So there's this theory of team formation where you have teams, they form, they storm, they norm, and they perform. It's cheesy. It sounds cheesy, but it's true. It's like teams get together, they form, no one knows each other, it's kind of weird. Then they storm, everyone gets angry at each other. It's a good step. That means you're stepping in the right direction. Everyone's starting to get comfortable enough to expose their true selves, and conflicts occur. And then they norm, and then they calm the F down and start to be cool with each other. And at that point, they've exposed their vulnerabilities to each other, and they can start to perform, right? And teams that are at that performing stage, you can get to a point where you can offload some of the stuff the manager do at the team level, so the manager can concentrate on the stuff, on all the shenanigans at the management level above, because there's a lot of shenanigans. Trust me, you don't want to deal with.
No.
But if you come into my office, I'm happy to share with you if you really want to know. If you have to work with me. I am radically transparent, but sometimes you just don't want to.
Can I ask a question about hiring? How many of you are in hiring loops frequently, or some of us? Okay, or have like interviewed people, or yeah. So in that process, have you ever found like the JD to be very? I don't understand how most companies, including companies I've worked at, write JDs. Like the job description is usually like a list of tools we use and languages we use and like a broad description of what we do, but because there will be like a number of different responsibilities on any given person and their fit will depend on who they are, it can be difficult to know what we're looking for going in. Like, how do you decide what you're looking for going into that interview, like to fit into a model like this, you know?
I just want to say this is really great discussion. Going super well. It is 8:30.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Respect time.
And I would like to respect our host here. Eli has been wonderful setting up. We want to let anyone who wants to go home. We will continue this upstairs in the cloud room.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No,
totally
no.
okay. And
Don't mean to kill it.
I respect that you're respecting the time. That is awesome. This is our time zone expert. I want to thank you guys so much. This is what I like about Papers We Love. Like, this is not a presentation. This is an interaction, and like we're all like learning together. Like, so thank you so much for coming on this learning journey with us.
Well, I won't cut the stream until you're done talking about it, because I've got the stream still going.
Papers We Love is awesome.
We love it.
You should come. Hey, if you want to come do a paper, please come see me. Please come see Max. Afterwards, we need people to volunteer to do papers. If you've done paper in the past, do it again.
Papers?
Yeah.
I noticed that at the beginning you were saying present a paper.
People is tired. You need your
I
rest.
changed. You're right.
Are you taking off?
You
You need your rest.
But I think it's good for change. I think facilitate is really good.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure.
yeah,
I saw you
totally.
jump
Facilitate.
That's what you did. And I said, like,
Yeah. This is how it should be. Yeah. So.
Is it still going?
I thought it might, but it seems like people are saying goodbye to
Thanks,
each
everyone.
other.
Oh, you're still streaming.
Yeah, I am.
Oh.
Are we done?
Yeah, we're done.
Okay, I'll cut it.
So
You can make some more faces. You're on still.
For the